All right, hello friends. We are back to talking about books. Today we're going to discuss an essay, though the essay is contained in a book. The title of the essay? The Advent of Ahriman, an essay of the deep forces behind the world crisis. It's written by Robert Mason. Before I go on, let me say that I have found the essay online, free in PDF form, but I specifically got it from this book, Book of Lies by Richard Metzger, which is, I think it's a fascinating book that gives several very widely different perspectives on, I guess what is generically called the occult. I think that would be a good way to describe it, though. I'm not really sure if it's accurate to say that esotericism and the occult are those synonymous, or I'm not really sure where Hermeticism, occult, and esotericism. I'm not really sure the differentiation between the terms. They seem to maybe be interchangeable. I don't know. Whatever. But there's some widely different perspectives on here. I mean, widely different. There are people who come from it there's a interview with Anton LaVey, who was the Satanism founder. But then there are also things that come from a more Christian perspective. And the thing that I'm about to discuss, I think could be accurately described as coming from a more Christian perspective, though it's so mystical and esoteric that it gets into different territories, but it's still at its core, I think it's an Abrahamic Christian worldview. I think it could be characterized by that. I'm not going to go into the whole essay because the essay is intense, man. And I would say that it is. It seems more relevant now than ever before to the events that are happening, but who knows, right? It's always the danger of you make a connection and you start to hallucinate that you have found some kind of defining answer. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just all coincidental. But so basically the essay is trying to make sense of these larger forces in the world that are the world crisis, that are driving us to crisis. The reason why this is fascinating to me is because this was written before the current events that we're in right now. So it seems like it was pretty predictive of things, but again, maybe that's a hallucination, right? I mean, you always see things like people who read their daily astrology and think that it's legit just because it happens to coincide and it's just coincidental, which I don't know if astrology is real or not, man. I don't know. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just saying human beings, we are prone to see patterns where they don't exist. And trying to remain skeptical, I just always want to stay grounded with it. But this essay, I don't know if I've ever read an essay that's so dense with challenging and weird ideas. I feel like you could write a book on the essay, which is really interesting. But it's based, at least partially, it's based on writings of Rudolf Steiner, who is somebody who I admire quite a bit and who I have learned quite a lot from. I don't know if you haven't encountered Rudolf Steiner, he's long gone, so his materials are freely accessible all over the internet. I would highly recommend it, man. For tools to help you become a better person, Steiner had some great stuff out there, man. But anyway, yeah. So the book revolves around this being called Ahriman. And Ahriman is the inspirer of materialistic science and commercialism and permeates modern culture with deadening forces. And so Ahriman is kind of to my interpretation, it's kind of become the defining force of our modern world. And it's kind of run amok, and it's becoming too powerful. And there's also another really quick thing about computers in here that I thought was interesting. Anyway, sorry, I should have prepared better for this, but he also has this really interesting thing to say about computers and how they are, whatever. The main concept that I wanted to discuss today is this really interesting idea of how the relationship works between the fundamental forces of reality or creation or whatever. And so his perspective is that Ahriman is the materialistic like logical, coldly rational force. And then at the other end of the extreme is Lucifer, who is this like imaginative, inspiring force. But the thing is, and then Christ is the balancing force between those two forces, right? Let me read exactly. Okay. To sum up the description of the triad of spiritual streams, the conflicts of human and spiritual life do not derive from a simple, two-sided war between good and evil. It was one of the great insights of Steiner, it's referring to Rudolf Steiner, to renew the ancient teachings of the golden mean, of good as the middle way between opposing extremes. Lucifer is too warm, too flighty, too unstable. He inspires human fanaticism, false mysticism, hot-bloodedness, and the tendency to flee earthly reality for hallucinatory pleasures. Ahriman is too cold, too hard, too rigid. He tries to make people dry, prosaic, Philistine, materialistic in thought and in deed. And indeed, not indeed is one word. And hardens what would be healthily mobile, supple thoughts, feelings, and even bodies. Christ, as the exemplar of the regular gods, represents the middle way between the too much and the too little, holding the opposites in balance, and leading mankind to find the healthy middle way. Seen this way, Lucifer and Ahriman are not purely evil. They both bring to human and earthly evolution forces that are needed for good, healthy development in the fulfillment of God's plans. Evil results only when events get out of balance and run to extremes. I could keep reading on, but that is that's the core of what I find really fascinating. You know, we're living in a very it's a difficult time that we're living in, and I can see his perspective on like Ahriman running amok, basically, right? Like we've lost touch with the inspiring and the more inspiring and numinous aspects of life. And so like we are entering into this hardening Ahrimanic age, I guess, or we're in it right now. Now, like I said, I want to break this whole essay down, but to do that, I'm going to have to actually sit down and write. I'm going to have to write it out, and it's going to be like a half-hour, an hour-long video, but I do want to because it's got a lot of interesting, it's chock full of fascinating stuff. But that general idea of these two forces that are not inherently evil, but when left unbalanced, create evil outcomes. And then Christ as the balancing force between them, and Christ as the force that is pulling these forces together and leading humanity forward into our evolution. That's a really interesting idea, and the reason why I like it is because I like any worldviews that can lead to clearly actionable positive outcomes. Like I don't really like getting mired in like thoughts that don't have any practical outcome. Well, I do like it, but that's kind of the problem. You like it too much, then you get mired in the rabbit hole, and you're stuck in the rabbit hole, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it becomes unhealthy and obsessive. But what I like about this worldview is that it allows us to view what's going on from a different perspective, and in a perspective more as balancing things. And I think that is important because right now we're living in this time of incredible division and just conflict. And does it seem to be helping? I mean, like I asked, does anybody feel like that's helping? Because it doesn't seem to be helping to me. And so to me, it is a constructive idea to think about bringing things back into the middle and back into moderation. And that is what's actually happening in the world today. The world has become too unbalanced in one direction. And yeah, on top of it just being interesting intellectually, I think it's a useful model to help us see how to center ourselves and how to better ourselves. That Christ middle ground with these two opposing forces on each side which are pulling at us, which if we're all honest, we feel pull at ourselves, right? And And that's the battle for clarity, right? That's the battle for self-betterment, right? Is like you always feel yourself pulled to these extremes to do these things that lead to unbalance and lead to unethical and immoral actions. And yeah, and so it's a matter of bringing things back to the middle. I just think that's a really interesting concept. I don't really know how to go into it regarding like the overall metaphysical, like, is it real? I don't know. I'm not really sure. But it seems like a useful mental tool to me. Seems like useful knowledge. But I just thought that was an interesting concept. And on this one, more than any other video, I would love to hear people's thoughts on this in general. If anybody knows any background about these thought processes, this essay or anything like that, I would love to hear about it. But if not, regardless, my friends, I hope you're having a very productive and happy 2022, and I hope that you are moving confidently and competently towards your goals, and that you are remembering to stay healthy and to enjoy life. In these crazy times, you got to remind yourself every now and then to just enjoy things a little bit. All right, peace out, friends.